some low ego action here. So I'm laughing because I think I just saw Dr. Nick dancing to this song or something. Hi, I'm Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. We're a full-service CX and UX agency, and it is time for our monthly office hours Ask Us Anything, which is, exponentially beyond Ask Me Anything, because we've got two special guests. Let's bring them on. And they are Darren Hood and Dr. Nick Fine. I need my fake applause here. Yay! Let's start with, is everybody's sound on? Because Darren's laughing and I can't hear him. Darren, is your sound on, or did I do that to you?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I do. So, Darren, why don't you start by introducing yourself? We'll just go in order.
Sure, yeah, that was my silent laugh. That's why you couldn't hear me.
Evil laugh.
Silent Muttley laugh. So,
Who the heck are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Darren Hood. I am as I like to say, a first-gen UX designer. I've been doing experience design now for a total of 25 years, full-time now for the last 16 years plus, almost 17 years. Now, very excited, absolutely love the discipline to the extent that I do it when I'm not at work. I cannot stop, even though sometimes I feel like I want to, or have been made to feel that way. I can't stop. We try, but we can't. And
Can't
so, hey,
stop,
Shailene.
Won't stop.
Yeah, exactly. And that was exactly what I wanted to say. Can't stop, won't stop. I've tried, and I end up right back in it. So I just forget it. This is me. And so I do the work. I educate. I'm a professor. I've just started a new consultancy. I'm doing all types of things that I won't even bother mentioning. I am celebrating a year of my anniversary for the World of UX podcast. So hopefully folks check me out over there. I absolutely enjoy doing that, and we're going to be doing some not live shows, but we're going to start doing some recordings soon too, and putting some stuff out on YouTube. So that's me.
Wonderful to meet you. Dr. Nick, tell us about you.
Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Nick. You know me, I'm the noisy one on LinkedIn. What can I tell you? You know me. I'm not even going to bother repeating. Everyone knows me. I'm UX psychologist. I founded a movement called UX psychology because I wanted to move away from designer-centric design thinking UX and more towards something more behavioral. Whilst UX psychology isn't the best name, it's going in the right direction. It's a good signpost.
Yes.
Go to UX psychology on YouTube to get involved and I would strongly recommend you watch a video that I made a few years ago called An Introduction to UX Psychology. It all starts there. Be aware of people bearing the name UX Psychology. People are already stealing it. Other than that, that's me.
Yeah.
All right. Hi. Okay. So, and Kayleen sent a video, and I'm just now trying to figure out if I'm going to be able to get it into my system in time. But let's start with some of the questions I've got ahead of time that are not Kayleen's video. And while y'all answer it, I will let you know. Oh, there's a running cat joke you guys don't know about. We did episode 108, which is what isn't design thinking. And one of the improvised jokes that ended up coming out of that was meow, meow, meow. It's a little hard to explain now, but now whenever we say design thinking, people from the chat will put up cats because of meow, 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 design thinking. Again, longer joke. Go watch episode 108. All right, so I'm going to start with these questions. I'm going to ask each of you to answer them while I try to get Kayleen's video question into the vMix system, not sponsored. How much negotiating of compensation, annual salary, benefits, bonuses can you actually do? Dr. Nick, do you want to start with talking about that? No, give it to Darren. He's on the other side of you. Okay, yeah.
Sorry. Over to Darren, only because I'm a contractor and I haven't actually done any serious permanent recruitment for 5, 6, 7 years. So somebody else will have more experience than me. Sorry.
No problem. I have only engaged in negotiation twice over the course of my career. And I would venture to say that both times it was unintentional. I have never, when they talk about what the ballpark is, I tell them what I'm happy with. I don't know if you'd call that negotiation. I do not. And then they say, okay, that's in our ballpark. That's definitely what we're shooting for. and then that's pretty much where it ends most of the time. But in the unintentional situations where it's come up, they tried to lowball me on 2 separate occasions. I mean, by like $20,000-$30,000 tried to lowball me. And then when I mentioned, okay, that wasn't my understanding, and we ended up talking about it, that's as close as I've come to and I always end up getting what I was asking for. But at the same time, I also think that ended up manifesting itself later with the way that the organization carried themselves. So it's, I know that some companies do it. And I do think the one main thing I want to mention was that I do think it's dependent upon the company. You cannot negotiate with every company, for sure. You cannot. A lot of them are coming to the table with an approved amount that they're going to offer you salary for, and everything is going to revolve around that. But there are times where I have heard about people saying that they go with a lower number and maybe they take more PTO. I've heard about that being negotiated more than anything else. But outside of that's pretty much all I've got on that. If someone lowballs me in the future, I'll probably, because of my track record, I'll probably walk away.
I think what I would add to that is just, you can't know if someone's lowballing you if you haven't figured out your budget and some other things. If you haven't decided whatever your value or your budget are, you got to do the spreadsheet of your expenses or how much you're trying to put into savings or what it costs to have your life or things like that. If you haven't done that already, then it's hard for you to know in some cases what's good pay and what's bad pay, other than, is this more or less than what I'm making now? So I think that it's important for people to have a sense of how much they need to make. That's from Maggie. She says, woohoo, 3 Musketeers day. And so you have to have a sense of what you need to make. And then, of course, on top of that, there's what you want to make. And that's, so whenever people say a number to me, if I don't like it, I'll say, is there room? Is there a range? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes I say no. And as Darren said, sometimes you can try to negotiate for other things, like that's the number, but more time off. And then sometimes if they ask me first what I want to be paid, I say, this is what I'm used to being paid. But as I say in my HR training, sometimes even if I'm willing to take less, if I'm trying to be a good negotiator and start a little bit higher, sometimes that knocks me out, because they assume that if they pay me anything less than that, that I'm a flight risk and I will leave the moment I could make that somewhere else, which is a display of lack of trust. Nick?
Yeah. There's one thing to add there is a lot of companies have bands, like salary bands, and so because historically how much are you earning becomes a really awkward conversation and starts civil wars and all kinds of fires internally. Basically they'll say, right, this band is between 50 and 60 or what have you, and that's it, because you can't earn more than your boss, even if your market value as an individual, as a professional, says so. So I would say, I've had this the past 5-6 years. I've been for a couple of job interviews. Because they don't keep the salary visible, you get into this extended discussion late in the process, and it's inappropriate. I personally, if people are trying to lowball you and are trying to screw you, I'd move along. What will happen, unfortunately, over time, is these companies will hire mids and juniors for the, or whatever it is, for the money, and they won't get the right job done, and they'll realize that they ought to pay the proper money to get the proper people in.
Yeah, that's part of my 2-year prediction, which we'll be talking about on a future podcast. Don't forget, you can ask your questions live in the chat room. I'll add them to the list, or go to the very top of the screen. You can go to deltacx.link/ask, and you can actually ask 24 hours a day, and I queue them up for each Tuesday. Abhinav, is that a question? So next question is, if there isn't enough time to ask the job interviewer all of your questions, what's the best way to get those questions answered? Send a thank you note with the questions? Wait for the next round of interviews? What do you think? Who wants to grab that one first?
I'll start off. We'll go on. Go ahead. Go
ahead, Nick. No, go ahead.
I would wait for the next round, personally, to see if you're successful. Otherwise, if there wasn't chemistry, you read it wrong, and you're asking questions after the fact, either it's futile or they're never going to come back to you. Whereas if they liked you and they want to learn more, that's the time to, because they're going to ask you when you see the next people, or it won't be the same people. When you see the next department or senior or whatever it is, they'll ask you, or they'll want to see you asking the right questions, and to have more up your sleeve is always useful. That's all I would say. Yeah. Darren?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind for me is, building on what Dr. Nick said, is that you want to strategize questions first based on how much time you're going to have. If you're in an initial screening and it's only half an hour, don't come to that session with 8 questions. You're not going to ask 8 questions. You're not even going to get to ask more than 2 or 3. If you move to the next round, have the other questions queued up in general. On the flip side of that, if there's something that's like just a burning question that is critical to you as far as building into that next session, whether you know you're going to have it or not, ask it, but don't give them a list. Maybe 1, possibly 2, and then hold on for the next round of interviews. But you need to have a strategy for your questions. You need to make sure that you're asking questions at the right time, and that you're structuring your length of questions, how many questions you have available, based on the allotted time that you're going to have. And then to add on the top of that, what if you have interviews that last over, like some companies, they'll interview for 4 hours, and you're going to 3 or 4 interviews with different groups of people. Then you have to have groups of questions for each of those groups of people you're going to be talking to. And I would say that you need to match those questions based on who you're talking to. Don't ask a question to a group of, I interviewed at one nameless company once, where the first group of people I talked to, they were all designers. So you're only going to ask questions that are relevant to that group. You want to make sure that you do that. Don't get into the strategy of, well, I need to ask questions so I sound interested. Don't do that. Don't put on an act. You want to make sure that these questions are sincere, that they're relevant, and that they help to demonstrate who you are. I do highly recommend a book. I don't know if I mentioned this before. There's a book called 60 Seconds and You're Hired. If you need help with questions, check that book out. It's a fantastic book. Helps you get your head together when it comes to how to carry on in the interviews and how to ask questions and what types of questions you need to be asking.
Yeah, and what I would add, oh, sorry, go ahead. And we've got a follow-up question from Maggie. What if they're short interviews, 3 to 4 rounds?
That's short.
That's a lot of.
Yeah, that's not short.
That's a lot. Wow.
I don't want to see the long ones if there's only 3 to 4. But I would say. Point, very quick. Go ahead.
Sorry. On that last point, very quickly. Oh, dude, sorry. I've been in user testing sessions all day. It really depends upon how the interview has gone as to how the questions. Sometimes it's so discursive and it goes so well that you get to have that conversation, a flowing conversation that's on point, and you get all your questions largely answered, and you can truly get to the end where both sides understand. Don't ask questions just for the sake of it. We've done a really good job here. And there are other times where the questions can be so disconnected from the conversation that you've just had. It feels like you're doing it on principle, and that's really weird too. So you've got to gauge how the body of the interview went and how that matches with the questions you're going to give at the end.
And the only thing I would like to add to this before our next question, which came ahead of time anonymously, and I'm going to request that you guys get out your notebooks and your pens, because this is one of those long stories with questions built into it. Yep, get ready. Yeah, get ready. And it looks like Kayleen has a follow-up question to this too, which we'll add before the long question. But when it comes to asking questions in interviews, I think the only thing that I would suggest is have some kind of prioritize your questions. So for example, there's a few things I need to know before I'm going to do a design challenge or some sort of sample project or whatever they're calling it. I will not do a design challenge without knowing the salary. I'm not going to wait until after I've spent hours on a fake design project, whatever, only to learn they're paying way less than what I'm making now, and they have no room to budge on that. So there's definitely a few things that I need to know before I'll even do a design challenge. So it really depends where I'm in the process, but very often I'm trying to figure out, sometimes even at the first interview or HR screening, what does this pay? What's the range? It doesn't make sense to keep wasting anybody's time if you can't come anywhere close to what I need to either eat and make a living or be paid what I perceive that I'm worth. So come up with questions and prioritize them. And the more, to me, and people may disagree, but to me, the more deal breakery they are, the more I want to ask them early. But you have to ask the right questions to the right people. I'm not going to ask the HR screener, what is the company's approach to research and utilizing research for their designs? HR screener isn't going to know, but HR screener should know the salary. And if they haven't been clear about the salary, you want to be able to know that. And if they say, we can't tell you yet, or that's negotiable, or with experience, I say, give me a range. You know what a range is. No company creates an open job and they have no idea what it's going to pay, not even a range of numbers. Give me the range, please. And usually they do. So push for that. Follow-up question from Kayleen before we get to the long question. I've heard to avoid, let's see, Kayleen's question. No, Kayleen says, I feel uncomfortable when my companies ask for my target salary first. Of course. Well, it's a game. Kayleen's follow-up question was, I've heard to avoid naming specific numbers until the offer is in hand to maximize your negotiating power. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll go ahead and start off on this one. I tell them what I have. I give them like a 5-year history. And when I say this is what I made when I was here, I let them know what I made. And then I'll say, I'm comfortable in this range. So I start talking range and I leave it at that. I'm not expecting to negotiate anyway, because really another thing about negotiation is I'm thinking about them meeting my needs before I'm matching theirs. So if they may have a number in mind, but so do I. So if they're not going to hit that number, we're not going to keep talking anyway, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not going to negotiate, because as far as I'm concerned, I think it's, for certain groups of people, it might be more appropriate anyway. But I just personally, I'm not going to do it. I'm not big on negotiation. If somebody says, okay, now let's talk, we like to negotiate. No, for what?
I just realized we got to so many follow-up questions. I'm not sure we totally answered the original question. So I'm just going to take a shot at the original question, and then I'm going to ask you another follow-up question that's come in from Dimitris. And so the original question was, if there isn't enough time in the job interview for my questions, what's the best way to get those questions answered? And you mostly said wait until the next round. But again, if it is a deal breaker, then with my thank you note, I might say thank you so much for the interview. I look forward to the next one. But I'd like to see, is there an opportunity to get some questions answered before we move there? For example, can you give me the salary range? Now, if I don't have a list of questions and I really just have one or two, I might email that with the thank you note. And so that's just something I might do, but I'm not sure any way you go is really wrong here. It's really up to you to feel, read the room, as they say, and feel these people out and see who's the right person to ask the right question. Dimitris had a follow-up question, which was, how about treating job interviews as actual research? Have your research questions prepared, know which questions to ask at each point, etc.
Exactly. That's basically what I call myself doing. I mean, because if you too many people go to interviews forgetting that that the company is interviewing as well. You're interviewing them. So those questions need to be legit. You want to uncover as much as you can. You want to find out, they're trying to find out whether or not you're the right person, and you need to find out whether or not that's the right company. So if you come in with questions that are only scratching the surface, it's not uncovering things that you feel you need to know. You're not finding out what their work process is like. You're not discovering anything about their culture, their UX team culture. Then you're falling short and you're just going through the motions. So taking a research-like approach is phenomenal. Thank you, Demetrius. That is perfect. That's what it is we're trying to do. Because say you get an offer, but you heard some things based on the questions that you presented, they give you an offer, and you go, nope. I had an interview once with a company, and just based on the way things that happened during a design exercise, ironically, I had already decided if they give me an offer, I'm going to decline it. And it was because of things that came up during that process, the way that they manifested things, the way they put as many eggs in their basket as they did with their researchers that were leading this particular exercise, and ignoring what the designers and what all the other people were saying, even though they had a dedicated research team, and the position I interviewed for was not going to be doing research. Why did they put so many eggs in the basket with the researchers? So when I saw that and presented certain things, that let me know. I don't care how much money you offer me. I don't care what you're doing. This company is the absolute wrong company to go to. It's just not the right thing to do. And when they did a really classy move, the recruiter called to let me know what the team decided. And she said, would you like feedback? They had feedback for you from the interview. And I said, no, I don't. I said, because there's constructive criticism and there's destructive criticism. And what I observed with the team, I know that the feedback is only coming from one group of people, and they're not capable of giving constructive criticism. So no, I'll decline to hear what they had to say. They're not going to help build me up, because they were engaging in microaggressive behavior during the interview process. So no, I don't want to know what they have to say. I'm not a junior. I'm not getting started. I'm not new to this. I've been a hiring manager before, which is another reason that I recognize the flaws during the process. So. But
Thank
anyway,
you.
no.
And Nick, anything to add before we move on to a whole new topic for which you will need a notebook?
Yeah, the thing is that, Darren, you just said it yourself. You're a senior. You get to approach an interview situation in a completely different mentality. You have the boot is much more on your foot as it is theirs, because you are interviewing them, and I feel the same way. But you've earned that over many years of hard work. If you're more junior, the boot is on their foot, and you've got to be much more careful. And you're trying to get a job, you're trying to get into the industry. So I totally understand where these guys are coming from, especially if they tend to be more junior or less experienced. For what it's worth, I think any company that's going to make a hiring decision on you based on the quality of the questions you ask is not. I'm sick of that old school HR bullshit. The whole I'm just going to be really quick and honest about this for a minute. HR is like recruitment. It's all rooted in ancient practices. You're seeing in the pandemic world, it's all being questioned, and rightly so. We need a change in the interview process. Much like, you've heard me rant before that I say management is a lost art. It's so management is gone, but so is the art of interviewing, the skill, the science, whatever you want to call it, of interviewing people and acquiring people. So yeah, if people make you jump through weird hoops or doing 9 levels of interviews, seriously, I mean, if that's on the way in, what's it like when you're in?
Yeah, it's a preview. It's a preview of ugliness to come. So here comes the long question. It's kind of a story. Here it goes. Hi, Debbie. I'm trying to figure out how to deal with a difficult coworker. We currently collaborate and co-design on a lot of projects, mainly due to how we're structurally set up. Not much wiggle room here. He can technically be my lead, but he doesn't have the title nor the responsibilities to do so. So we're both equal. He just has more experience and has been working in the company longer than me. Whenever we do design reviews, I present my reasoning, my explorations, we explore more ideas, and get to an agreement. Several hours later, he will backtrack on what he said or just continue to give unsolicited feedback. I understand his passion and desire to do the best possible design, but honestly, it's driving me insane. To the point I want to tell him, well, you fucking do it. He tends to be very opinionated and has a strong personality as well, and it's not like I feel safe to tell my manager what's going on, because from my understanding, they don't have the best working relationship and I'm not about to get him in trouble. I'm not sure if he does this to our other coworker, but when he does it to me, it's more evident and public and exhausting. I'm trying my best, and I know this place is not for me, but since I don't know when I'm leaving, I still need to address this somehow. I know you'll probably mention validating with customer interviews, and unfortunately, those are limited. We rely heavily on competitor analysis, desk research, some light usability testing, but that's about it. Nothing deep and rich, so it can really become a battle of opinions. What's our advice for this person, Nick?
You have to leave. I'm sorry to say that. That's really straight up, but you have to leave. Okay, all the signs are there. Darren, Debbie know what I'm talking about. Anywhere that is a cult of personality that's based around who's got the coolest opinion or who can present their opinion the best is an absolute shit house, and you want to get the hell out of there as quickly as you can. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your professional development. It's not good. You know, I mean, if you're a user researcher or any form of user-centric UX practitioner, how can you operate in competitor analysis, which is a race to the bottom? It's copying your neighbor. And you know, if you're not talking to users or getting any kind of direction in that way, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just, you know, any kind of insight. It's just opinions, and that's some kind of internal civil war. And you're absolutely right. My answer before you said all that stuff, I was going to say you need to approach this person and sit down and talk through it with them, you know, because you can work through this stuff. But if that's the culture, I wouldn't even bother. Sorry, that's me. Darren, what do you reckon?
I'm a piggyback. I say amen to all of that. And you know, I've been through, these guys have heard some of my horror stories. I've been in the exact same situation before, and multiple times, actually. And to me, and some of you, if you're connected to me on LinkedIn, you've heard me talk about it before. I think that the world of user experience today is extremely and unnecessarily hostile. And because of a lot of different things. But in this particular moment, looking at the question, it's within the dynamics, the team dynamics of a lot of companies I've seen. I very rarely have I seen a UX team where this type of thing that was just described is not existing. Matter of fact, when we had the show where we were talking about juniors and seniors, and this person, I get the impression that person is more senior, and this person might not be a junior, but they might be less senior than the other individual. I actually have experienced that same exact thing from juniors. Because of, I love what Dr. Nick said, the cult of personality. A lot of companies, that's what they are. And they're on the 100 best places to work list and all these other types of things, but they're really a cesspool of dysfunction, if you really call it what it is. And they get high scores on their surveys because the people who know the companies are nuts won't fill out the surveys. They know, because they say that it's anonymous. They know how to find you. Don't fall for that. They know how to find out what you said about them. And that's why when you don't fill it out, you get a notice saying you didn't fill it out. You know why? Because they know, and they know when you did it. So don't fall into that trap. I know I stopped doing it a long time ago. When I realized that anybody saw them, and you guys know I'm a big movie person. Anybody see the movie The Mummy, the remake with Brendan?
Yeah, with
whatever his
Brendan
name
Fraser.
was. Yeah, and they keep talking about Imhotep, and these people walking around Imhotep, these mindless people running around. That's what these folks remind me of. I actually almost did a cartoon one day where a bunch of the UXers were standing around saying Imhotep, no matter what the person said, because that's what's happening. These people just walking the streets, Imhotep, and nobody knows what's going on. It's insane. But anyway, brass tacks. Emotional intelligence, because even if you realize, yes, I second highly what Dr. Nick said. It's time you recognize this is a type of situation that's not doable. It's not workable. So you need to leave. However, depending upon what the market is like where you are, it's going to take some time between the time you decide to leave and the time you actually leave, which is why emotional intelligence is so key, because you have to maintain your sanity while you're in that holding process. So emotional intelligence is absolutely key, because you got to manage you. You can't change them. So you've got to excel where you are, the person that you are. You need to be resilient. You need to be sound. You need to be at, so I think my video, can you guys hear me? Oh, it's back now. Okay.
Yeah,
Welcome back.
There's a book that I recommend called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And then there's a partner book called Overcoming the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Peter name wrong, last name I know I got right, but Lencioni. I highly recommend tapping into those books. I actually put those books on my, because it's something that I found that there's so many dysfunctional spaces in UX that having the knowledge and skill to manage that dysfunction is critical. So we're not talking prototypes anymore. We're not talking research anymore. We're talking about soft skills that help you to excel so that you don't get flattened by the things that you're being subjected to. Learn everything you can from that individual. Even though the person might be a quintessential jerk, there's still some things you can learn from them. So I challenge you to learn what you can from them. If they've been around the company more, they know more about the company than you. If they know more about the practice than you, there's something that you can do to help build yourself. So don't miss that opportunity. Don't let the fact that that person is a jerk cause you to miss out on the opportunities. Don't allow him to bully you at all. Don't allow him. And I'm going to respond to what Ralika just mentioned in one of my comments here, because the person is engaging in microaggressions. But there's another set of videos I highly recommend you tap into. I can't remember the person's name, but if you go to YouTube and look up narcissism, anything about narcissism, you will find that they say it's not in your best interest to confront a narcissist because of what the fallout will be. And the person gives a lot of strategical recommendations on dealing with, because the person sounds like a narcissist. So if you, a real narcissist, I'm not just throwing the term out there, I'm talking about clinical. If you go and look up narcissist, you will find out that this is accurate. Because people just say that when they don't have anything else to come up with. They just throw the term out there. It's if you call the person out, once they know that you know they're a narcissist, what starts off as a microaggression, full-blown war. So don't invite the whirlpool. Find a rudder, find a good motor, find a good sized boat, and navigate that baby so you can get through it. But when you realize they're nuts, just realize the exit is the best thing to do.
I'd like to add to that before we get into a follow-up question and then Kayleen's video question. The two things that I wrote down during that long question were, I don't want to get him in trouble. And I don't have children, but I always feel like one of the worst things people teach children, and again, all my children have 4 legs, but I feel like one of the worst things people teach two-legged children or whatever legs they have is like, don't tattle and don't tell on people and don't get other people in trouble, because I feel like that is a really weird lesson that sets children up later to not report abusers. They end up in jobs and bad relationships and they think, oh, I can't get that person in trouble. And I say, you are 20-something, 30-something, 40-something, whatever. This isn't recess at the elementary school. This is, I think we have to move past, I don't want to get this person in trouble. If someone really is bad, evil, a jerk, our workplaces are supposed to hold them accountable. They're not supposed to protect them. They often protect them, but they're not supposed to. So my thought is, I don't think of it as getting that person in trouble. I think of it as that person made their own trouble, and I'm going to have to talk to somebody about it because the trouble already exists. I didn't create the trouble. I'm just saying the trouble out loud. And the other thing that I noticed is something that I've said very often in some of my presentations, I think also my book, where very often we struggle at jobs where, especially when it's an individual, we think, well, I must be the only one, because they asked, I don't know if they're doing this to my coworker. And my thing is, we often think that we are the only person who is having a tough time until we start comparing notes. When I worked at a previous job and they brought in a new vice president who was a total imposter, and one of our directors was a total imposter, we all started struggling and we had a lot of problems in a lot of areas, but we weren't talking to each other. So we all thought it was just us. And everybody got imposter syndrome and everybody thought that they were just bad at this all of a sudden. And when we all started comparing notes, it was such a relief because it wasn't just happening to me. It was happening to 45 people because it was from the VP and the director. So my thought is, compare notes, maybe talk to that other person because, and you don't have to say, this guy's doing this to me. Is he doing it to you? I think there's a more gentle way to say it, which is, sometimes I'm having some strange interactions with this guy, and I was wondering if you might be comfortable sharing some of your experiences just to see if the same thing is happening for both of us. And you don't have to tell her what you're feeling or what's happening for you. I'm assuming the coworker is a female. Sorry, I'm giving people random pronouns today. You don't have to tell them what's happening to you. You don't have to tell them long stories. You don't have to start yapping about stuff. Just say, I'm having some strange experiences with this person, and I'd like to see if it's happening to you too, because if it's not just me, maybe we should be talking to somebody. And my opinion is, and so the follow-up question was, which I'm going to jump on and then let the guys follow up with. I can't find it now, but it was, when a situation like this happens, let's say you decide to leave, is it worth mentioning the reason in an exit interview? So normally I'm mentioning this before I get to the exit interview. I am talking about this in the exit interview. I'm definitely a document this person. I have to apologize. There seems to be a thunderstorm and a hailstorm here, so I'm hoping we don't lose power. If we do, I promise we'll come back as soon as we can, but there is a risk that I lose power and I'm running the stream. So apologies in advance. So I tend to document everything. I tend to document. So even these problems you're having with this person now, I would be saving their emails. I would be taking notes on those meetings, and I would go back. And when this person comes back later, changing their mind and giving you more feedback, I would say, I just want to make sure, these are the notes I'm going to put into the project. You said this, and you're saying this, and that's going to go in the project. You put in the project, and that way, eventually, when you have all of these notes and all this stuff, you can go to a manager, a director, an HR person and say, here is my story. And I think the documentation is going to help. And so that's some of the things that I would suggest, but we have to get out of the kind of childhood, like, I don't want to get him in trouble. Hey, I'm 49. If you are making trouble, what am I going to do? Be silent about that? So Darren, something to add?
Yeah, you just made me think about the concept of enablement. Is that when
That's true.
we don't hold people accountable, even though some people are at the forefront of driving that behavior, when we don't take the time to do something to stop it, we're actually part of the problem too, because we're putting juice, we're putting gas in their tank that allows it to go forward. We've got to, we are, as it was already said, we are trained to be to embrace unaccountability. And then anytime we do something that's accountable, then we're made to be the bad guy. If you were called a tattler when you were a kid, but you were actually calling something to light that was a danger. Fast forward, look at the people that you saw that happen to when you were a kid, and today a lot of them literally are either in jail, dead, or just really oppressive when it comes to other people. The smart person was called a nerd. Person that followed instructions or respected the teacher was called a teacher's pet. We have this entire culture that happens everywhere where everything is flipped. And when we're adults, we need to reverse that and right the ship.
Nick, anything to add before we get to Kayleen's fresh question?
Yeah, Darren mentioned it, the accountability word. I don't think there's much value in saying that sort of stuff in an exit interview. I mean, it's nice to throw a stone, but it probably won't land, and the HR person will shield the person from it because they don't want any fires set by somebody on the way out. So it's probably futile, and maybe just burns the bridge a little bit more.
Bridges burn.
Exit interviews, I would file under old world HR shit. If they can be made valuable and have, and actually input to the business and actually cause change, great, but they don't. And finally, all this he said, she said bullshit, all that politics, that crap. Look, Darren and Debbie are much better at this than me, and I'm self-confessed not the best politician in the world. But for me, I find it takes out too much of my energy, takes out too much of my professional energy. All I care is I'm a JFDI kind of guy. I'm an agile maverick, whatever you want to call it, right? I just want to do good work. And I literally, that's all I care about is doing good work. When it comes to this kind of stuff, it's secondary, it's auxiliary, it's bullshit. And so I try to ignore it and just crack on and do what I need to do. It's not always the best policy and doesn't always work, but that's just the way I do it. Maybe it can work for you.
All right, so I'm going to attempt to play Kayleen's video question, which came in through our deltacx.link/ask, which does allow you to send video questions. So let me merge that over and see if we can get that to play.
Hi, I was wondering if you guys know of hiring managers' motivations behind requiring design challenges. Thank you. This show is the highlight of my month.
That's very nice to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayleen. So, do we know why hiring managers require design challenges? Who wants to jump on that first?
Because it covers up their inability and their lack of skill. That's the straight cut answer. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to evaluate. Do you realize that people don't know? I mean, everybody, even on this call, the people that are going to be watching this by way of video, do you realize how much time do you spend evaluating anything, let alone other UX professionals? And then all of a sudden you're going to hire somebody and then you start engaging in something that you don't do, that you're not good at. So people put together these ridiculous exercises and approaches, and they don't know what they're looking at. Look, they already wrote a terrible job description. Do we think it's going to get better when it gets into the interview phase? The answer is no. And the design challenges, they're ridiculous. The one that I had and that I just made reference to, you get a half hour. They give you a scenario. Clock's already started, by the way. They introduce themselves. Clock started. Then they introduce a scenario, and then they ask you to come up with something. And all of this is happening within 30 minutes. Is that realistic? Are you ever going to actually do that? No.
I hope not.
You're not. No, you're not. And then here's the other thing. The more senior you are, the more experience you have. And when I say senior, I mean real senior. The more you're going to iterate, the more you're going to tap into the different resources in your own archives about how to approach this design. So design exercises actually help discriminate, because I guarantee you that the people behind it are biased. And then they're going to discriminate against the people that are more senior, because the people that are more senior are going to approach it from several different angles, where the other people who've done nothing, they cookie cutter everything. So they're going to cookie cutter this too and come up with what they can. It's just bad. It's a bad idea. And I'm a former hiring manager, never even remotely thought about subjecting somebody to a design challenge. I knew how to evaluate talent. And people that don't are going to try to templatize everything, because templatization is always a sign of a lack of knowledge and skill. So I jumped all over that one right away. Sorry, that
Nick,
one just
design challenges.
I mean, it's hard to. No one will disagree with everything that Darren said, but wait for the but. Ignore everything before the but. The but is this: we all know that there's too much lies, bullshit, misrepresentation in our world, right? And people are standing up and saying there are things which they are plainly not and have never been. So if I'm going to make a contract with somebody to come and work for me, especially in England, it's really hard to fire people. Maybe it is where you live or whatever, right? If I'm going to be kind of like get married to this person effectively, I can't do it on what comes out of their mouth alone, because it's so unreliable. It's 95% likely to be completely not true, because that's the nature of our world. That's the sort of truth ratios we're talking about. So you have to have some kind of way of them demonstrating knowledge or experience. Now, I understand that design challenges are not the way to do it, and these situations, I was in an interview recently, those situational questions, can you tell me a time when you did this? And you've literally got 3 seconds to recall, hundreds of jobs to come up with a specific thing. This is what I mean about recruitment. It's just a mess. So we do need some kind of evidence, but design challenges are not the answer. This is the problem. So when going into these design challenges, try to understand that I think what they're trying to do is to see you do the thing.
Don't forget
to see
my
the quality of
HR
decision
training.
making.
My HR training has a
Yeah.
chapter on
Very
stop
brilliant.
doing design challenges. deltacx.link/HR-training. Send that to hiring managers, send it to recruiters, send it to HR people, send it to sourcers, send it to everybody. It's completely free and they should freaking watch it. Darren, something to add before I give my thoughts?
Yeah. I agree with everything Dr. Nick said. Don't do design exercises, but please do or design challenges. I'm going to get specific with that because when we say that, we know usually what it is. But do something. And you can present scenarios. I've been the best interviews I've ever been on. Somebody presented a scenario, and it just happened ad hoc. It just happened in the moment, and I loved it. They didn't plan it. They just showed me this one company I was working at. They had just acquired two other companies, and they were trying to combine three applications. And they asked me what I thought about something that they were doing, and I just went to it. And so I began to demonstrate, and this is to Dr. Nick's point. It's a phenomenal point. I began to demonstrate my expertise, and I did it from the hip. And it wasn't presented in an unrealistic situation. It didn't have this weird time box associated with it. It didn't tap into, or at least foster, a lot of ridiculous bias that I've seen. We don't have time to get into that, but it was perfect. I got to demonstrate who I was. I got to demonstrate my passion, my acumen, everything. They got to see who I was, and I ended up getting that job. 2 times that's happened to me, and both times, not only was it perfect, but it was a joy to do as an interviewee.
Hey, the thing that I wrote down is the main problem with design challenges, and something I suggest people do ask ahead of time, is what are you trying to assess for and who's going to evaluate this? Because if I find that an HR screener is going to evaluate this, I'm not going to bother. If the engineering lead is going to evaluate this, I'm probably not going to bother. What are you looking for? I find a lot of my mentees come to me and they say, I did this design challenge and they didn't want me and they said I did a bad job, and like, what did I do wrong here? And when I take a look at it, I say, they weren't clear about what they were even looking for. And so I say it's okay to double check these things and ask questions. If they don't want to answer your questions, move on. There's a lot of jobs on the planet right now. I mean, LinkedIn sends me alert on UX jobs. I think I'm getting like 11 jobs in my inbox every few hours. So this isn't the last job on the planet. And if it's not right for you, keep moving. And Charlene said, what can we do? Because every company is asking for this. And, I would love to see more people saying no to it. But I think we can start, before we get to that no, I think we can start by asking more questions. What are you trying to assess? What didn't you find in my portfolio in my interview? And who's going to evaluate it? How are they evaluating it? Because I have endless horror stories of doing design challenges for UX agencies and telling them, I'm not an artist. I'm going to give you medium fidelity wireframes. That's fine. We're a UX agency. And then later on being rejected because it wasn't polished enough.
Right.
And so what the hell?
It's a bullet dodge.
Yeah, exactly. These are always bullet dodged. Madalena in LinkedIn, I can't put LinkedIn on the screen, says, I once saw an example of the hiring process that included not a design challenge, but a design thinking challenge. Well, super bullet dodge there. Kayleen says, thanks for answering my question. I had a discussion with someone who said their applicants' portfolios were incomplete or bad, and therefore they wanted a design challenge. If your portfolio is bad, I don't want a design challenge. I want you out of the running. When I see a portfolio that for some reason I think is bad, I don't want to test you to see if I'm really sure you're bad. That seems a disrespectful waste of your time. If someone's portfolio is incomplete, then I'll interview them a little bit longer than other people and try to get at some of their processes, approaches, decision-making, and other things. So yeah, so I think that it sounds like somebody who really doesn't know how to tell good from bad and doesn't seem to know how to say no to someone who's bad. If you have a bad portfolio, you should not be considered for this and possibly any job. Nick?
The only thing I wanted to say was they probably were asking to do a design challenge with a bad portfolio because it's good value to them. Like that's
free ideas.
Like to have a less polished portfolio if you're in the junior end of things, or don't come from a design heritage. You see, so they're thinking, well, if I can still get this person for cheap, if they can do the job at hand, if you know what I mean, if they can grasp this challenge I'm going to give them, You know, it's a bit like a shortcut around your portfolio, really.
And I say, send them my HR training. You can always say, look, I'm going to do this design challenge, but increasingly people in my industry are asking companies to move away from these. Here's a free HR training. And there's a whole chapter on design challenges.
Debbie, be careful though, right? What we can't do is advise juniors when
Well, I can't.
Big company says, do this design challenge for me. And they go, well, have you actually seen Debbie Levitt's HR training? It's a bit smart-ass, isn't it?
Well, I think that there's still opportunities for some people to try to say something back to these people, because I think that while the bottom line is we all want to say no. No one's ever came to me, and I mean, other than Darren's stories, it is quite rare for someone to go, I am so glad I just spent 8 hours inventing the future of currency. And I'm so glad I just spent 9 hours guessing at a customer journey map. Like, that was great. You can't put it in your portfolio because I don't want to see guessing in your portfolio. So I think that if we can't say no yet, because right now I'm writing to people, I'm saying, no, here's my training. But I think Dr. Nick's right. We might have to start out with some questions and something that reminds people that this is meow meow design thinking, and something that reminds people that we need to move away from this, and maybe with questions like, who's assessing this? What are you looking for? And how will I be evaluated? And if you find they're like, then you decide how to handle it. You know, I'm not saying every person who listens to this show has to email my training to everybody, but especially if you're ready to walk away, why not walk away with a Hollywood bomb thrown?
One last thing recently, I was on I'm just going to say a senior research role, and I was interviewed by two leaders of the design function around research methodologies. And again, that's like a painter being interviewed by carpenters, you know? So you got to be really careful. Not careful. It's just, I find that as a weird strategy, basically. It is, yes, chemistry is important, but actually subject matter knowledge is also really important.
Yeah, and who's assessing that? Who's assessing that? I had an interview last year with an agency, and the guy said, you know, tell me your approach to UX. And I started going through all of user-centered design and how I prefer observational research, and here's how I normally run with it, and here's how I do this, and here's what I'm able to do with the insights from my observational research. I'm strong in information architecture, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of what I said, and I thought he's looking at me, a Zoom interview, and then he goes, well, what about experience design? Now, mind you, I had described the full user-centered design process. I had gone into wireframing, interaction design, prototyping, utilizing cognitive psychology principles in my interaction design, realistic prototypes that are quite advanced with usability testing, and after all that, he goes, okay, but what do you do in experience design? And I think I just
check, please.
I was like,
right.
What's the difference? And then later they were like, oh, they didn't like you. And I was like, yeah, which part of that was something I couldn't do other than what's the difference between experience design and user experience design? Okay, bullet dodged. So yeah, don't bang your heads against the wall, everybody. Workplaces are generally crappy, hence training. And, there we go. Let's move to the next question because we're already almost an hour in and I feel like we've answered -3 questions. This one's from Abi, who's here today. And it says, today someone commented on my design that a loading screen is bad UX. The intention was to preload some audio and video so that buffering is avoided. Is the loading screen bad UX? So I guess loading, spin, spin, spin. Dr. Nick.
Okay, that's a basic heuristic visibility of system status. Okay, so I'm going to argue that one all day and all night and come at me, bro, on all of that, I mean, if you're going to have somebody waiting for something, buffering, you might as well do it up front. I mean, look at any of the Creative Cloud apps, right? Okay, Adobe are not the gods of experience design at all. In fact, they're not. But they've had a splash screen, loading screen since Photoshop 2 since they, stuff happens in the background. You might as well show them something pretty or something valuable or occupy their mind with something rather than just a friggin' loading animation.
Make a cute animation out of it. Whatever's related to your business, make a cute animation. Like there's one I saw, it was one of the apps I use related to my pet, and I think it was like a dog running after a bone, and it was like loading. So you can turn it into something cute, but yeah.
Somebody turned it into a Pong game, didn't they, recently? A few years ago, there was some kind of loading screen, and whilst it was loading, there was a mini game of Pong. Crazy, but hey, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's like Google's dinosaur jumping over cactus when your internet's not working.
Okay.
Yeah.
Darren, anything you want to add before we move to the next question?
Yeah, I'll be quick. Dr. Nick hit it. If something's got to load, it's got to load. For the person to say that it was bad UX and that was it, and to not explain why, I would say that was misguided. If things need to load, it's because you're trying to deliver a good UX. So just do something of value while it's loading. Do something of value. And you might have to do some research to validate what's of value, but just make sure that you deliver something of value because you want the experience to be seamless and to be delightful later. And so if you don't do that, isn't that going to be a problem? But not just it's not a loading wheel. So bring something of value. Loading wheel is not value. It's like if you're on a Mac, the little spinning wheel or an hourglass on Windows, it's letting somebody know that something is going on, but they don't know what's going on. So you want to communicate, you want to be transparent. That transparency is going to give a good user experience as well. Hey, this is loading in the background. In the meantime, this is not exactly what's happening, but this is what you're communicating. Something's loading, and in the meantime, yada, 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 yada. And then when it's ready, you let them know. So you've kept them engaged, you've brought value, you've demonstrated that you're concerned, you're empathetic about where they are. Now we're getting something done. I know some people don't like that word. I think it depends on how do you define it. But you are demonstrating empathy when you do something like that. So kudos to you.
Yeah, can't add anything to that. Dr. Nick said it best. I want to remind everybody to please subscribe and press the like button. We've got the Slack channel, deltacx.link/join Slack, and of course the optional tip jar, which buys me delicious cheese, plus the super chat and super stickers, if you are so inclined. And we've got some questions from Ralitza about user research. So she's got a question and a follow-up question that I've queued up in the system. She asks, hey, Debbie, Darren, and Dr. Nick, I have a question. How long does it take you to do thematic analysis or some sort of analysis on oops, now it's cutting it off. I forgot to write it down. On a 1-hour interview session. So for every hour of interview video you have, how long would you say it takes you for your notes, coding, analysis, synthesis, affinity diagram, that kind of stuff? Dr. Nick, I'm going to go to you first.
That's a good question because I've just spent a full day or half day for user research sessions. I'm all over this. I've been getting better at it by watching back things at faster than 1x speed, and that can help reduce that time. But it is definitely a multiplier of something around 1.5 to 2, I would say.
Does that include observational or just interview?
Well, let's say it doesn't matter if I've got an interview, a video of an interview or a user testing session, should we say, and I've got to go through it and analyze it to either pull out themes or errors or whatever it is.
Thank you, Charlene.
Thank you, Charlene. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Sorry, it's not good to distract
Sorry, I said observational, 1.4 point.
Yeah, it's about 1.5 times because once you've stopped to either transcribe a bit or to cap it or to make notes or whatever you're doing, anytime you're pressing stop on the play button, effectively, that wait time is extending. So I always give myself at least, if I've done an 8-hour session, that's at least 2 days of analysis. That's how I'm looking at it. So
2x.
It's approximately 2x with efficiencies, and you can probably get it down to about 1.5, 1.75. I think that's probably where I'm at right now. But you can't get it much lower than that because time is time. You have to be able to consume. You can run it at 2x speed, but you're not going to get it all in or even hear it. 1.3, 1.4 is about the fastest that I can do, retain comprehension and kind of the deeper semantics.
So just to make sure I understood you correctly, because there were a lot of X's in there, you tend to listen to it back at maybe 1.3x, so it's a little bit faster, but it still takes you about twice the length of the video to get your notes and other things together. So if it's an hour of video and you have it at 1.3x, you're spending almost 2 hours getting your notes and affinity diagram and stuff together.
Yeah, I'm probably not doing an affinity diagram. I'm often using a whiteboard that's sitting next to me and putting some themes across the participants. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good, Darren.
One last story. Oh. Sorry, Debbie. Sorry. One last thing. It depends on the nature of the work that you're doing. Some of this work can be analyzed faster because it's much more success and fail, and you're doing a bit more kind of quantification of it. When you're looking at themes and really deeply understanding needs and pain points, that's much more qualitative and obviously takes longer. So depends on the nature of the measurement, should we say.
Okay, Darren, anything to add to that from your research experience?
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple things that stand out to me is that, Dr. Nick just said it depends. Because when you're doing research, that you've got different things take different amounts of time. In general, there's more depth with some, less depth with others. So on one hand, I can't give you a time on that because things vary. Maggie. Also, I have never, I can't answer the question on time because I never focus on time because I'm just always trying to max out the excellence factor on it so much that that's my point of focus. And that's it. I never pay attention to the time. I do not. But I want to get everything I can out of it. And I don't just think about the analysis because I'm also thinking about the synthesis. And so these things are going to be going on. Analysis with no synthesis is worthless. So we got to tack that on to it. And I never think about the time at all. I just don't think about it. I just, what can I get out of this? And I might wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning after having done some research and get some ideas and get up and go to my office and log in. And so, are we really counting that if that time comes up? So I never think about the time. I'm just trying to max out the excellence because not only do I want to max out the excellence of what's going on. And sorry, Ralitza, by the way, for mispronouncing your name earlier. But I want to bring the value and represent the value of UX properly. And that's why I think my mind is there. Just adding on to what Dr. Nick said, because listening to stuff faster definitely help.
We've got a follow-up from Charlene and then actually a follow-up from Ralitza that she sent in earlier. So Charlene said, on that note, does having a transcription help you move things faster?
Not for me, not to date. Oh, sorry, dude. Not for me, not to date, only because I haven't found a good service, but I know there are good services out there. The entities I've worked for just haven't paid for them. The time when I would really benefit from transcription is when I'm making show reels and I'm putting subtitles on. Subtitles are a really good thing to do, especially when you're working with thicker or difficult accents around the country or whatever your research territory is. But that takes the most amount of time from me is transcribing into subtitles, not necessarily transcribing a whole session. If I am transcribing, I'm just taking some quote marks out. So no, is the simple answer. But that's just for me. Darren, sorry, man.
No, you're good. I route that. I'm good.
Yeah. So, and again, a little bit of context here. If Ralitza, do you mind me giving people some of the context of why you're asking this? Because her follow-up question was, I find myself not being able to do more than 4 or 5 hours sometimes, and it's a very time-consuming and exhausting task. So I think she means like 4 or 5 hours in a day, and then feeling kind of done. Like this isn't an 8-hour day. This is a 4 or 5 hour day, and then toasted toast on a toasty stick. Okay, she says she doesn't mind me giving some things. So how many hours of this kind of, listening back and note-taking things can you do in a day before you are D-U-N done?
I will say this. I'm going to jump in and say this first, Dr. Nick, because I think you'll have more to say, but I just want to throw one thing in. I'm glad that you showed that because I forgot one thing I wanted to mention. I think that while I don't focus on time, I do per project. I benchmark how long I think it takes me to do certain things within that project. So if I conducted some research and say I've got a sample set of 20, I've got an N of 20, and I'm looking at this data, after I've gone through and looked at maybe the first 2 or 3, I start to maybe target spending X amount of time on doing the work per sample within that set. So that way, if I need to do X time that I'm spending, then I may find that I'm getting through each one maybe in 3 hours. And then you got to make sure you're not doing too much where you're basically burning yourself out. You're losing effectiveness. It's just thinking about the statement that was just posted. If you find out you're toast after 4 or 5 hours, then make sure you space them out. Spend X amount working on one, and then step away from it, do something else, find some low-hanging fruit, knock that out. And if you've benchmarked already that I need, in order to really maximize what I'm doing on these samples, it's going to take me 3 to 3.5 hours, then plan accordingly. But you're not going to be able to benchmark it after the first one. You're going to take 2, 3, 4 to get through. And then once you realize this amount of time, then plan accordingly. That's what I'd say. Benchmarking is key.
Yeah, that's what we're working on right now, and also what we're working on with some of the other apprentices. So the context here is Ralitza is my assistant on a real project, and she is rewatching all of the observational videos and doing all of the note-taking, tagging, coding, affinity diagram, and even starting some of the Larry Marine task analysis. And so she's just kind of curious. I've spoken to her a little bit about what some other people do. This person needs 2x. This person told me they do 3x, when it's that depth of watching what people do. Not everything's going to show up in the transcript or what people say. She has to watch the video and notice, oh no, they clicked on this, but this happened. And so I think it's going slower than she expected. So I think we're all curious what other people experience, but ultimately it's going to be unique for each person and for the project they're doing. And, she's doing an amazing job. So, I don't think she should worry. And as Dr. Nick and Darren both said, over time, you'll find you'll get more efficient. And there you go. So cats. Next, Kayleen had a question that says, by the way, we're going to wrap it up for questions because we only have 20 minutes left. We have 3 questions, and I just get the feeling we're not going to have time for too many more than 3. So if you have a last question, get it in now. Otherwise, I'm cutting y'all off and sending you home.
We're not today?
What?
We're not
How much do you want to extend? It's coming up on 8 p.m. my time. We've almost gone an hour and a half.
Oh, I thought we were 2 hours. Okay.
Oh, you want to do 2 hours? Oh no, if you want. Okay, what does my calendar say? Oh my God, my calendar does say 2 hours. I'm so sorry, y'all. I haven't slept much in the last week, as the Slack channel knows. Hey, is that Rocky? You're muted.
No, this is Max.
I don't know Max. Hi, Max. Darren has cuddly cats. I think of cats as like murderers. So Darren has cuddly cats. And of course, Kayleen says, meow, meow, meow. Maggie says, what? We're doing 2 hours? Yeah, we promised that when it's the 3 of us, especially because you have 3 long-winded people, that we would try to do 2 hours. So let's see. So keep the questions coming. I'll cut you all off at the bar later. So we've got 3 questions. Here's one of them on the screen. Kayleen says, she asked this earlier when we were talking about job interviews, and she said, what about questions that a candidate could ask to demonstrate soft skills? So very often these hiring managers and people want to see people demonstrating soft skills. Is there something a candidate can ask the HR screener or hiring manager that shows soft skills?
Meh.
Meh. Was that a meh?
The meh. I don't know. Go on there and I'll think of something.
I refer back to that book again, 60 Seconds and You're Hired. They actually have a section in the book that gives recommended questions to ask. I'm remember correctly, it's only like $10 on Amazon. It's available on Kindle. It's good stuff. So that's part A to my answer. Part B is the more you build your emotional intelligence, the more you'll be calmer and a bit more you find it easier to be yourself. And when you and it's clear that you're being you, then that actually has a lot of value, I think, to folks. Comes across
unless
as
you're me.
canned.
Don't be used.
Because even when you look at that book, 60 Seconds and You're Hired, you still need to personalize those questions because it could come across as a canned answer or canned question, and canned question will work against you.
Good point. Yeah, you don't want to overplan and overthink this. Dr. Nick, something to add there?
Not much. No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm more of a hard skills guy rather than a soft skills guy, if you know what I mean. I know soft skills are really important, and I totally understand the value, especially of stakeholder management and educating upwards. But I don't know how you can do that in an interview unless you're showing some form of evidence, something you did at a show and tell, at a demo, a town hall, something where if you're a user researcher, socialize your user research to influence upwards. I mean, those are great skills, but I'd want to see the deck, rather than somebody saying, yeah, I've got great stakeholder management skills. I don't believe them, unfortunately. I'd want to see the evidence.
Got it. And all right. So Charlene said I missed one of her questions, which always happens when I'm trying to watch the chat room. Sorry to Charlene. Let's get her question up now. Charlene says, to both of the doctors, is it easy to work in industry after completing a PhD? I think I was afraid to ask that because I was afraid that Nick was going to cry.
Yeah.
We love you, Nick. We hug you.
I'm going to beat myself up with my science bat on camera. Is it easy to work in the industry after completing a PhD? I don't know if you probably saw it when we talked last time, so I won't bore you with the details, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. When I defended my PhD in 2009, I couldn't get an interview. So it was not easy at all. You could have an immense amount of science and psychology and everything. If you haven't got a portfolio, it doesn't mean jack diddly. And unfortunately, or at least that's what it meant in 2009 when I was coming out. So Dr. Nick meant literally nothing. The fact that I had just been a chief technical officer and all other big things meant nothing. And I understand now why, for the simple reason that we said earlier on design challenges. If I'm going to employ you, I need you to know that you can do the job. Right. And just saying I'm Dr. Nick doesn't do it. It should do, but it doesn't. And it doesn't because research or user research, in the real world. So no, it isn't easy to. However, there are lots of people like me and people before me who are trailblazing it for you. So it's going to get easier. I know in America, most heads of departments and leads are all PhDs. It makes sense if you're going to be mentoring a team of researchers to have a PhD at the head. So I'm hoping is around the world, this kind of happens more and more, because I don't want to blow my own in a world of fake news. And you need to be a Padawan of a Jedi if you're going to learn the good stuff and not turn to the dark side.
Darren, when do you expect to get your PhD? What's the status there?
I am 4 classes away from beginning my dissertation. And we basically sort of write it as we go. So we've been piecemealing a lot of things together, and then we'll just get to it. I don't know if it's 6 months. I don't know how long that takes. So sometime in 2022, about a year from now, roughly, I'm expecting to be done. I'm going to add a layer of complexity to the question. I think I did one of the worst things I ever did by getting a second master's. That was one of the worst things I could have done as far as working in the field is concerned, because I become a target of narcissists as a result. People, they see me as somebody that, it's like, I hate to put it this way, but like when people go to jail, you've seen this in movies where they say, take down the toughest person there if you want to like stake your claim or, make yourself untouchable. And so it's that same mentality. People has nothing to do. Am I blipping?
Yeah,
Did
your
I just blip
internet took you down. So much for your 2 master's degrees. Your internet took you down.
But the PhD, my PhD is not really for my UX work. It's for my education work anyway. It's an education leadership. But people are going to, that's going to be a reason for people to ignore me. Narcissists aside. They don't think they can afford me. They don't want to, they had somebody refer to me before. Oh God, this is really getting choppy right now.
Yeah.
Somebody referred to me as an academic once. I had experience before I got my master's degrees in UX. I'm not an academic, as that person put it. And they made assumptions that I could theorize about the work, but couldn't do the work. Those were all assumptions. So my master's degree has put a target on my back, my 2 masters, I should say. The PhD is made the target larger. And neither one of them really helped me when it comes to doing UX work. So I can do the work. And some people will take the time to find that out and some won't. That's just the way it works. Unfortunately.
I kind of enjoy that target for what it's worth. I like it. When people come at you, it's like, come on then, let's go.
These emojis are from Dimitris, who says, respect to Darren for doing a PhD while working, writing, speaking, it's actually 4 cats, and etc. Yeah. I think we've met 3 of them on various shows. I always remember Rocky, and Charlene had a follow-up. What?
I'm going to ask my wife to bring Simi.
Oh, very good. So Charlene had a follow-up question because she thinks she would like to do a PhD, but she's not sure if she should work or stay in academia. And she wants to know, Dr. Nick, why didn't you stay in academia and teach?
I wanted to do a PhD when I finished my psychology degree when I was 26 years old. And my mom and dad said, get out of here. We're not paying for you anymore. Go earn some money. So that's a common, that's a common thing that most people, they're like, I genuinely wanted to extend my science and do all of that. But mom and dad were like, this guy's just trying to avoid getting a job. And like I said, most people, that's a common kickback. So my academics, my psychology degree, my HCI masters and my PhD are all very distanced apart by like a decade, if you know what I mean. So, if you can get it done in one go or do it earlier or younger, I would strongly recommend it. You're more resilient. You've got more neuroplasticity, i.e. you learn faster. You won't have, I've got dependents and costs. I had to live on £11,000 a year for 3 years, which, that's really that's ramen, that's not fun. So if get it out of the way. I did it at the age of 32, which is stupid. Do it younger, but yeah, definitely do it. It's a good thing to do. The world is full of fake news and misinformation. Having more scientists, more PhDs, more qualified researchers is a good thing. So definitely do it. It's a good investment in yourself.
Yeah, and random side note there is I am not on track for a PhD, and it's also not a spitting contest, but I did decide to do an MBA, and I should be done with that in August. That is my first master's degree, and I don't expect to get a second. Oh, hello, super cute cat. And they're also cuddly. Have you drugged them? How are they not scratching your face off right now? Cats are vicious.
It's like a tiger. I like that one.
Oh, my God.
This is our baby. This is Simi.
Super cute. And not even mad at you for holding her. Oh.
No.
I've got Olivia the dog here, but she's all wet. Anyway, she was out in the hail. So I'm doing Charlene says, ooh, I'm 31. So now I'm wondering, Dr. Nick says, do it now before you have to pay for children and cats and things. So at 49, I'm doing a master's degree for various weird reasons and sometimes no reasons. But I do these things early and cheap if you can. We had an anonymous question and from someone else named Nick. And he says, another Nick here. I'm in the middle of the job hunt and I'm struggling to grow my network. Do you have any best practices for how or when to connect with professionals at a company that is hiring? Best practices for connecting with professionals at a company that is hiring.
Am I starting?
Go for it, Darren.
Darren.
I don't think there are any best practices.
And
if you're
scene.
reaching out to people, I remember when I was interviewing for one company that I was in love with and I wanted to work there. And the recruiter suggested that I reach out on LinkedIn. I've seen people on Reddit talking about this too. Those are people with no experience telling you what to do, which means that they're telling you what to do, having no proof that it's going to work. Just reminding you of that. They told me to reach out to this big Fortune 50 company, I believe it is, and connect.
We'll never know.
It's happening again. It's happening again. Oh my God, it's happening again. It's so
Keep
bad.
checking if it's me, and my connection's like actually thriving today.
And I've got a 500 megabit per second connection, so I should not be having this issue. But anyway, I reached out to these people. None of those connections, the ROI of my reaching out was zero. It didn't benefit me at all. There are no best practices for reaching out to people. Either you know people or you don't. And no matter how many people you reach out to, it doesn't make you more qualified. So all that reaching out to people is a joke. Nobody can say that I did that and I have something to show for it. So take it off your radar. Take that energy and put it into building you up a little bit more, making yourself better, doing research on the company. That's the stuff that matters. Trying to find out what working there is like, or reach out to somebody and ask them what it's like to do work at that organization, what their UX practice is like. But you're going to find that out during the interview anyway. And if you have to apply for 100 jobs before you find the one you want, do it. It's a stressful, painful process. But that's just the reality of it. So we just keep going. Don't get discouraged when you don't get the interview. Don't get discouraged when you don't get the job. You just keep chucking away. And that's it. But I connected with 200 to 300 people at that company. It didn't benefit me at all. Now I've got all these dead connections from that company, and I delete them when I see them because it doesn't mean anything. They don't know me. I don't know them. There's nothing. Nobody's getting anything out of the connection. So like, get them out of here. Hit my ejector seat button on LinkedIn. Get them out of here.
Hey, Darren, quick point. I'm looking at my system's internal analysis of your video and Nick's video, and you are sending almost 3 times the packets that Nick is sending. I don't know if you have your, I don't know if you have your quality, your codec is different than his, your resolution is really high. So I don't know if some of the problem with this is that you are sending us monster packets. So quick side note. All right. So, Darren just blipped out. Come back to us. We miss you. Nick, do you want to comment on this before I add something? Darren, can you put earphones on? I hear myself echoing. Nick, comment?
Sorry, what was the question? What was it?
We'll never know. This was somebody who was thinking about networking by contacting people at the company who's hiring.
Yeah, I agree with Darren. I mean, ironically, LinkedIn is meant to be some kind of recruiter network, but it doesn't really help me find work.
Bye, Demetrius.
In fact, it helps me feel really bad about work. It's more just like glorified Twitter. That's the way I look at it. It's glorified Twitter with some extended discussion. But in terms of actual doing stuff, it's another PR channel, baby. I would invest in efforts in other things.
Okay, fair enough. The one thing that I want to add to what both of you has said is I think there's a little bit of a fantasy that we're going to find someone who works at this company. We're going to introduce ourselves and say we're interested, and they're going to go, great, I recommend you. You know, I'm going to recommend you for the job. And I find that people are very unlikely to do that. When a stranger writes to me and says, hi, I'm interested in UX, help me find a job, I'm always like, hey, wait, I don't know how your work. I don't know if your work is good. I can't put my reputation on the line and suggest you for a job when I don't have a sense of what you do and how you do it. So I think there's a little bit of a fantasy like, wow, if only I could connect more with people at this company where I want to work, I'll get my foot in the door. And I'm not sure that I'm sure there are a few stories where that's happened. Maybe you'll find out about jobs a little earlier if you're connected to enough people at that company. But other than that, I don't imagine that these people are going to push or recommend you when you're an unknown.
No, but some people,
Exactly.
they try that I wouldn't call it nepotistic, but it's part of their strategy is to try to find a backdoor entry or a side door entry into the company, either through some kind of cultural similarity or whatever that thing is. I know a few people, just personally, not to do with UX, that's how they find work, and their careers have all been about being helped in by somebody. I mean, I don't have any respect for that, but that's just some people's strategy.
All right, so moving on. Let's see. We've got a couple more questions and ask a few more. We might hang around a little bit more. Bathroom breaks if you need them. deltacx.link/ask. And thanks to those who have donated with some super chat and super stickers. So that was for Nick. I think it was Marisol who asked the question earlier that says, has anyone ever been called negative for questioning design decisions or the quality of work? Oh boy, how much time do you have? I better go to the bathroom now. Yes, all of us, yes. Darren, lightning version?
Lightning version is I had a post on LinkedIn not too long ago just about the use of the term negative, and how that really it's a subjective term that really doesn't mean, and say negative to 10 people and they walk away with 10 different messages. There is constructive and there is destructive. There's not negative. Either something is going to build, is going to make things better, or it's not. And so when people bring up that negative stuff, it's just a bad term to bring into the mix of your evaluation and your analysis. Yeah, it happens, and that lets you know. I'm sure if they said that, there's more going on that's not good. So that's my lightning round answer.
All right, Nick?
Everybody talks transformation, nobody wants change. You know, you have to be able to have a mature, evidence-driven discussion about how to make things better. If you want to call that negative, so be it. You know, I mean, I've been, as you can tell by my nature, the projects, and the only way we're going to do that, we can't do that with elephants in the room. And that's the bottom line. And so if somebody's going to try and gatekeep bad stuff, then I'm going to try and take it down. And most people actually, believe it or not, want that. They want that change, but no one's got the balls to do it. It takes some cojones. But it's worth doing, you know, and everybody wants change, but no one knows how to do it. So I would say keep pushing, but be careful of the pushing point. Try to do it respectfully and evidence driven.
Oh, yeah. And you can't take this personally. It's like the episode we did on resilience. I've been called hysterical. I've been called dramatic for saying, hey, wait, the product manager or the engineering lead is trying to overrule my design and go with one that they like better. Here's the possible outcomes of this that aren't the happy path. Are we prepared for that? And I was told, you're hysterical, you're just being dramatic. And then, of course, my number one thing ended up happening. And I was like, so, yeah. So just know you're going to be called all kinds of things behind your back and to your face, and you just have to not care. You just have to not care because these aren't your best friends. You're not going to invite them to your wedding. We don't really care what they think. You have to keep trying to do the best work you can, and someone who's calling you names is just trying to find something that you'll be sensitive about that will make you quiet. They're just trying to find a way to make you quiet, and I don't fall for it.
Yes.
Not once. I just say, this is a game, and I'm not going to play along, and you can call me anything you like, and you can say you're not going to sit with me at lunch and play kickball with me, and I'm just going to keep going.
By the way,
Darren, Nick?
Sorry, Debbie nailed it. I love what you said about game playing. My mum always told me, Nick, just play the game. Just play the game. And I'm like, no, I'm not playing the fucking game. Pardon the French, sorry. But I'm not. Debbie, I love what she said. The way to win is to not play the game. Everybody out there are players. screamingly obvious to those of us that aren't playing a game. And all the defense, all that negativity you're talking about are people defending that stuff. So you're going to upset the empire, that they've built. So don't play the minute you start to play, you become a player. Don't be a player. Walk away.
Yeah, remember, the game is, I don't want to hear that I'm negative. I don't want to hear that I'm hysterical. I'd better not say anything next time. And it is just a game, and you can't do it. And Kayleen says critique and conflict can feel uncomfortable, but it can be transformative if people are open and vulnerable. Being called hysterical and dramatic is ad hominem, right? Yeah, it is. And again, it's designed to disempower me. And by shooting at me as a person instead of my work or something else, no one said Debbie's predictions are unreasonable. It's Debbie is hysterical. So it's an effort to undermine me and make me look so bizarre that you don't want to listen to me. Wow, you don't want to listen to Debbie. She's just hysterical. But I documented everything. And when it came true, I said, great, now let's go with my design. And they said, no, make our idea work. And I said, you just learned your idea didn't work. And then they threw me off the project. End scene.
Right.
So no happy ending to that story. Many of my stories don't have a happy ending, my friends. Darren, wait, can Nick and I keep going? Nick and I keep going back and forth. Let's let Darren say something. Darren.
I was thinking about the game of reverse psychology. I mean, people engage in reverse psychology. They play these games. They want you to start, especially, I think Debbie brought this up once before, people want you to defend ghosts. They want to create a ghost. They create a scenario that doesn't really exist. And they either, like one of our favorite people has a tendency to do, become the champion of this ghost scenario, or they just demonize you. And passion should not be demonized. Matter of fact, passion is a core element within successful UX. If you take passion out of UX, you don't accomplish a whole lot. Yes, I love what Ralisha just. Oh God,
Ralitza, everybody.
Ralitza.
No, accent on the A. Ralitza. Ralitza. Am I doing it right? Because I'm trying to help everybody with this.
I'm tongue-tied. Anyway, she's right. It's an attack on the personality because that's the last resort. That's what people do. And it's sad. And people don't realize, I actually did a piece somewhere else yesterday about character assassination, which is also strangely common in UX these days. And people
and all over LinkedIn.
I actually posted something yesterday down. And so I might, if I think about how to present it, I may so that I can add all the context. But people are willing to assassinate the character of others, and people listen to someone. Raleigh, all right, there we go. I'll take that. Raleigh. The people don't realize when you start listening to a character assassin, you've already bought into the game. You're an accomplice. A character assassin, especially when they're not presenting any substance, that's not worth listening to. We're trying to talk about doing UX. We're trying to talk about excelling at the discipline. We're trying to talk about getting better. What does anybody's personality have to do with that? And people will like dismiss what really matters, and then they start talking about all this other stuff. They're gatekeepers. Oh, where did? Oh, they're just being arrogant. No, the person presented something that's legit. I've been doing some studying with, just this morning, attended a session, a DEI session where they were talking about minimalization. And it struck me, and that's why I put a post on LinkedIn about it today, that minimalization is really happening a lot in UX. You present something about a design and they start minimalizing it. They don't even examine that what you said is legit. They look at the data from Dr. Nick's research and then they minimalize it, instead of actually looking at, this is really something that's valid. This is something that we need to do. And he's proven that we need to do it. And then they start engaging in all these stories that have nothing to do with what's being addressed. It's really sad. It's really silly that people will play these games, but they wouldn't be able to play these games if some folks weren't as gullible to bite.
And let me add quickly, Another fantastic reason to study your cognitive psychology to work in UX is so that you can recognize a lot of these behaviors. When you are,
Yes.
when you, it takes time and practice, but when you get better at recognizing the gaslighting, some of the narcissism, some of the
Yep.
game playing, when you study a little bit of psych and you can recognize that in people, thing one, save yourself and don't get sucked into the game and don't take it personally, don't get imposter syndrome over it. But that cognitive psychology should help us understand the bizarro worlds around us, because I think we've been in bizarro worlds in every jobs we've been in where the company seemed almost dead set on whatever went against customer centricity while calling that agile and saying they have empathy. And we're just like, what bizarre planet am I on? But you can make more sense of that when you know a little bit more about human behavior and you can see it coming. Quick side note, personal note, and I don't know how much any of our guests want to say about this, but I find if you grew up with certain types of parents, you recognize these games a little bit better. And yes, hands up,
Yes,
children of
absolutely.
narcissists.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to see those video presentations. The doctor actually talked about that and how that when you grow, if your parents are narcissists, truth tellers.
Yes.
When your parents are narcissists and everybody is assigned a role, when you grow up in a narcissistic environment, everybody gets assigned a role. Hey, doggy. Which one is that?
Olivia. Dog
Olivia.
number
Hey,
4
Olivia.
on the 5 dogs out of 5. Olivia.
Oh, she's eating that up.
Olivia. You're a
That
little
look on your
sleepy.
she
face.
is.
People say that pets don't have expressions. You can see that contentment. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But they say that
Totally.
everybody in a narcissistic environment has a role. And as soon as you start rejecting the role, as soon,
didn't
as
like
soon
that
as you
hold.
start rejecting, the role that the narcissist assigns you, the battles.
Yep.
That just happened again.
Yeah, well, we heard
Okay.
you. You said as soon as you reject the role that the narcissist assigns you, the battles begin. But
battles
those are
begin,
battles
yeah.
I fought since birth, and I can see
Yep.
them coming. I can predict them. And so I think that's really important. I also talk a lot about how I think to be really great in CX or UX, you have to predict not just the possible outcomes of products and things like that, but really what's going to happen on your team. If you can start to predict things from understanding human behavior, it's just going to be an advantage. Nick, something to add to that before our next question?
Yeah, I'm neurodiverse. It should be pretty screamingly obvious anyway, right? So what that means is I'm kind of freaky and different and weird to the outside world, and what that means is I get gaslit day
Yep.
and night.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
when you're weird or not different or not particularly corporate or talk, you know me, people can assign shit to you that isn't true, or and basically you become. There's the answer to this. It doesn't matter whether you're neurodivergent or whatever your thing is in this cult of personality. The one thing that has allowed me to be successful in amongst all this is the quality of my work. Okay? You can be batshit crazy, do good work, and no one gives a flying F. Okay? Or the only people that do care are the ones that are scared of you and what you can do, and that's a good fight anyway. So just stay focused. Don't let the idiots pull you down. Stay on target. Keep the passion, and you've got to walk through that fire. And I've walked through so much fire. I'm pretty much asbestos now. It's really important that you develop that skin. It really is. Sorry to say that. It sucks, and
it's
I bear the
good.
scars,
Yeah.
but it's good advice.
No, I what I like to say is I don't take things personally, even when they're
Yep.
meant personally.
Yep.
Like, oh, Debbie is this, Debbie is that, and I go, yep, how nice for you. Yep, absolutely. That hasn't hurt since age 4. Like I'm really
Right.
over that. So
Also, once you've
old
been played by a parent, like a mother, who is like the most important person in your world,
Supposed to
And
be.
you can stab me in the heart, and it ain't going to come close to my mum doing it.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Darren, your mom the
develop
narcissist?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mine too.
This is
My
becoming a
butt.
recovery circle, by the way. Just FYI, be
What?
careful. This is becoming a recovery circle.
Right, exactly.
You develop
Hugs.
such a set. You develop such a resilient mindset.
You do.
And we none of us realized that we were being developed like that. But we became truth tellers.
Yes, that was
Yep.
me.
Going back to as soon as
Me
we
too. Look at me.
started talking,
H2.
we're telling the truth about everything.
That was me.
I mean, we would sit and watch the adults in our lives do crazy things and say, that's crazy.
Yes.
Whereas other people would defend someone just because they were their parent. And what do we
Yes.
see with that now? What do we see on the news now? Somebody went up and killed someone, and then they interviewed a mother on the news. Oh, Jimmy would never do that, you know. And
Well, he
Jimmy's
just
been
did.
a nut. You know, everybody knew that Jimmy was a nut, except for you. This is where people start.
That's confirmation bias again. Sorry.
Yes. It's sad. So I'm glad. I mean, who knew? But it made me a truth teller. It made me resilient.
Me too.
It made me being willing to say the right thing, even though I get demonized for it. We all do. We get demonized for saying the right thing, you know, and they'll gaslight you like you're being paid to do it, and just ridiculous. But you stand, and I realize I don't take it personally, even though you get accused of that too. You sure do take things personally. I said, no, I know the difference between what's personal and what's not personal. And then I had a conversation with a former employer once. We were talking because I was trying to go back. You know, I'm glad I woke up before that happened. But you take things personally. No, I don't. And I said, here's something that happened that was personal. Here's something that's happening that wasn't personal. Here's something else that happened that was personal. Here's something else that happened that wasn't personal. See, I know the difference. But the thing is that everything I told you that happened when I was there before, you guys didn't do anything about it. Silence,
Yeah.
you know, and then we get that. It's amazing. So you really end up, when you grow up in a narcissist environment, you get put on a train of emotional intelligence before anybody was talking about it, because you become more self-aware
For survival.
than other people. Yeah, because you
I
have
think
to. That's
I think
how you
some
get out.
people again, we're off the questions now, but I think some people end on the track that the three of us ended on, but I had a biological sister who ended up on a completely different track. So I do think
Yeah.
that I don't know how many of you had siblings who did not end up truth tellers, who did not end up I have to help people. You know, I think that some of us said, you know what? I have to be the strong one, I have to be the smart one, I have to be the truth teller, I have to be the predictor, I have to help other people. And then there were the people who went in the other direction. So I don't think it's a
Yeah.
given that just because you had a parent
no.
that was a
Oh, no.
narcissist that you ended up in the Delta CX YouTube channel bucket.
Yeah, some people make the other choice. And the truth is, we had the opportunity to make other choices too, but we chose to do what we do and be what we are.
Listen,
Oh yeah.
Everybody does.
just keep it real and everything works out.
Yes.
We're all gonna be okay. So again, more shiny stars for that. And Kayleen says, took her a long time to find the truth teller voice within me. Yeah, not everybody discovers that right away. You know, I had a biological sister who spent our whole childhood defending the narcissist, and
Drink the Kool-Aid.
yeah, and I'm not sure she ever stopped. You know, eventually. Quick side note: you know, the reason why I refer to them as my biological family is because I have a second family. I threw all of the narcissists and enablers out of my life in 2007, and I haven't looked back. I haven't looked back. I don't miss any of them. So, you know, I'm that person who says, if you want someone out of your life, I support you. I don't care who they are. If you need someone toxic out of your life and you want to throw them out, I don't care what title someone gave them. I give you permission to throw them out. And I ended up with a replacement family who I call my adopted family. And those are the people in my neighborhood.
Yep.
It just occurred to me that the three of us are actually the black sheep of the family, all three of us.
Oh, yeah.
I was just
Absolutely.
about to say
I mean, I
that.
definitely
Yeah.
am 100%. I mean, no
How many
question.
siblings did each of you have?
Just one. And I
I
get on
have
great with him.
none through my mother, but I have 4 siblings that I'm aware of through my dad. But from what I understand, Papa was a Rolling Stone. Wherever he laid his hat was his home. If you get my drift, tap into the
Yeah.
Temptations there. But I heard that I heard I used to play with some of my siblings and didn't know they were my siblings when I was a kid.
I have a
But I
friend with
do
a story
have,
like that.
yeah, but I have a Japanese brother and sister. We're quite diverse. I have a Japanese brother and sister who I've never met, and then I have another 3 more siblings that are here in the States.
Darren wins the Unique Family Story Prize award, and I don't have anything to give you. But I that's why I sometimes tell people the CX and UX thing is in your blood. And I know when I say that, some people get me and some people
Yes.
don't. And I think that it's also why I'm starting my new initiative for letting children know about the jobs that we do, because I know that as a little kid, I would have known that I was highly organized, smart, could help people, wanted to see things made better for people, wanted to see people
Yep.
have better solutions to things. And luckily, I did have good influence from the biological parents, even though they weren't fantastic parents. My biological mother was a math teacher, and her thing was always permutations, combinations, and possible outcomes. What could happen next? And my biological father was a lawyer, but a good one, and he would always say, if 2 people are in conflict, what is the best where everyone can win? And those were some of my core. Sorry, I must have blipped. So those are some of my core
No,
influences
you
growing
didn't.
up. And I
You didn't
think
blip.
that supported who I was, and I just feel like some of us have this in their blood, and some of us are graphic designers looking to make more money.
For me, it's
That's
more
well put.
motivated by a kind of a form of intelligent laziness, if you know what I mean. I mean, for me, UX is about making the world a better place and catapulting ourselves into the future, because I want to be a future type thing, and getting us there faster, if you know what I mean. It's like I want to work smart. All the supports in my life that join things up better and make it easier, more integrated. Do you see what I mean? It's just that's what it's about for me. Is we all want an easier life. That's kind of it, really. I mean, that's where I'm at, and I'll do whatever it takes to make my life and everybody else's lives easier whilst I'm doing it.
Move to an Italian island. We actually do have a last question that I
Maybe
almost feel badly. Yes. Hey, not in that way. Hey, that was not appropriate for children.
Not meant nasty. You're horrible.
That's so bad. How could you think that of me? There's 1.5 million people here. How dare you?
How many people are watching this out of interest? I didn't even
How many
stop to
people
think
are what?
about that. How many people are watching?
Oh, according to this, I've got 10 people live on YouTube, and it only gives me a
As
YouTube
long as
count.
one of them isn't my mum, I survive.
I would almost hope one of them is my biological mom, just so she can know how much I don't like her. But that's a whole other story.
Awkward.
So yeah, it's like, why isn't she dead yet? Something's got to stop her from hurting people. So Kayleen has a business question for us. Remember when we used to answer those? It says, how do you build relationships with coworkers or different departments so that when conflict arises, discussions can be easier?
Oh, that's
Kidnap
dynamite.
their firstborn.
What?
Jumping a dick. Now, sorry.
What are you
Can I
drinking there,
start this
sir?
one?
Pint of vodka.
Okay.
Do you know
Can I
what?
start this one?
Moonshine.
Yeah,
Go
on,
ahead,
Darren, go for
Darren.
it.
You're on fire.
This is part of my prescription when it comes to driving UX maturity levels, that it's about the relationships even more than it is about the work. And so whether it's having lunch and learns, whether it's just having different sessions where people can come and sit and chat, whether it's going and purposely walking into a department and making sure to touch base with people, it's being in their face a lot, building relationships, learning what you need to do, learning what's important to them, and then coming into the wheelhouse for them, supporting things that other people in other departments do that have nothing to do with UX. Just being there, build these relationships, find out what's important to them, and not what just naturally developing the relationship, not because I want the UX to be better, but it's more realizing that doing the UX work is going to be better if we can have sound, solid, genuine do things to make sure that we have a common thread that's not just tied into the work as much as possible. Do whatever I've got to do, build these relationships, make sure they're genuine, and then when it's time to do the work, they're more likely to listen to you because they're not just listening to you through that one lens, so to speak, which for a case is volatile. So when you expand that lens, it increases the possibility that you're going to be able to interact with these people in a fruitful manner. And I've been doing that for years now, and I found it to be very, very successful. I love the question. It's key. When you just look at the work and are focusing on the work, you're going to find that you have a hard time doing the work. When you get better.
Nick, something to add
Riley.
to that?
That's such a good answer, Darren. The only things I would add to that are professional skill, or whatever you want to call it, attribute. If people know that you're straight, if you know, and I don't mean that in that way. If you're being authentic, if you're being real, that endears people to you, I think. Number two, if you're not playing games or any of that kind of political crap. And thirdly, probably the most important one that I found is if you can get out of yourself, if you can get out of your ego and get beyond that and realize that you're here to help people, be it your product manager or delivery lead or whoever these people are, by seeing as somebody who's helping them achieve their goals, you're a good person, you're a support, you're not a threat. So, you know, I say this an awful lot. I don't see myself with a big ego. I know I call myself Dr. Nick, but what I mean says on a project, I just see myself as subservient to my commander, who is typically the product person or the delivery person. And how, you know, what can I do for you, sir? What do you need to achieve? What's the objective? And it's just to be a team player, basically, in the right sort of a way, without being a sycophant.
Yeah, and I would add to that collaboration, but not democratization and not design by committee, which was episode 51 or something like that. I think there are ways for us to work together, for us to show what we're working on. I mean, gosh, how often do I hear about teams where UX hands wireframes or a prototype off at the end and walks away, and everyone's like, whoa, what just happened here? We can't even build this. When were you going to talk to us? So I think I always say the same thing that the guys have been saying, you know, work with your teammates, learn what they need and how they need it, and adjust what you're doing a little bit to accommodate that. Make sure you know if they don't want the 80-page report, do they want the 15 PowerPoint slide version? What can they digest so that you can get a stream of information to them, and not just wireframes, the research and information architecture and other stuff. I'm so tired of people thinking we only do wireframes because that's all they've ever seen. So I think that when we are doing more collaborating, but not designed by committee, then we feel more like a partner, and hopefully people are recognizing what we bring to it. Nick.
I'm going to ask a question to both of you two now, okay?
Okay, and then we have one last question. It just came in.
Okay, because what actually occurred to me is in the past 3 or 4 years, on my travels, I don't see wireframing happening anymore. I see lots of Figma and Sketch and some high fidelity, low interaction stuff, but I'm not seeing a lot of wireframing in any form. I know that there are Axial folk out there, and I know we are rare, but from what I've seen, I'm either seeing code or high fidelity stuff. I'm not seeing wireframing. Are you guys?
I agree. I think it's on the downturn.
Yeah.
Well, I remember some years ago, almost every conference I went to, someone did a session on wireframing is dead. And so I think that, and I agreed with it because I was using Axure. You know, I was like, I pretty much never wireframe. I go straight into Axure and see if my idea has legs. So I think that the people, to me, when I see a high fidelity Figma, I think of it as a wireframe. I just think of it as a high fidelity wireframe. If they've made the Figma interactive where it clicks from screen to screen, I think of it as a click-through model. Like, to me, it doesn't totally fit my definition of a prototype, so I still tend to see Figma and Sketch as a little bit more in the wireframe bucket. I know they sometimes call those things prototypes, but because they're not realistic, and if you try to do usability testing on them, it's already kind of flawed, I still see these as just a bunch of wireframes in a row. So I think that people think they're not wireframing, they think they're prototyping, but I would have to say when you're in Figma and Sketch and Adobe XD, even if it clicks from screen to screen, I tend to see it as high fidelity, well-designed comps that are a click-through model. That's just my perspective, but yeah, you don't see a lot of medium fidelity anymore, which is where I live. Darren?
Yeah, and I'll throw an asterisk on my response. I think that it's still happening, but it's not happening at the deliverable phase. I think that it's still happening to some extent before you get to that deliverable phase, that people will still wireframe when they're still trying to. Some people do, and you may never see it. It's like personas. I might create a persona, but nobody will ever see it. And so there are some things that happen before you get to the deliverable phase of things that I might wireframe something, but I'm not going to give it to my client, because it's just me trying to go through things and trying to look at the structure, because the skeletons are always going to appear before the skin no matter what. So even if it just happens in our head, it still happens. But when it comes to handing off wireframes, no, it's almost non-existent today from what I've seen.
This is the problem with all the design input. Prototyping as a iterative, agile, user testable feedback cycle, right?
Yeah.
You cannot beat an actual prototype. I challenge anybody. You cannot beat it for learning and iterating and making it better. Because the design world has come in and doing Figma, you've got these no interaction. It's not a wireframe if it's high fidelity, because you spend all that time and effort. The whole point is a wireframe. It's fucking quick and dirty, so I can wash through it. All the designers come in with this mentality of it's got to look a certain way for people to appreciate it at its real value. What they don't understand is the behavioral point is when you're looking at stripped back to wireframes, you can still learn about people to understand this, the drop down, the da-da-da, without the freaking color. And that's the design industry has to learn that in the next 10 years or UX goes nowhere, bottom line.
And think about how people misuse the terminology too. How many times have we heard somebody say, okay, well, I'm going to do these wireframes, and they come back and it's like some high fidelity, it's mock-ups.
Finalized graphic design.
They use the terms interchangeably. They use the terms interchangeably. Wireframing still has value. The question is, where is it going to show up? But I agree wholeheartedly. When it comes to engaging with the team, it's going to be something that's a little bit more, nobody wants to see boxes and arrows, as we used to call it. Nobody wants to see boxes and arrows. Even when I start out wireframing, when I'm in the brainstorming phase, by the time people see it, the fidelity has ramped up. I didn't get a job at IBM once because they wanted me to wireframe something, and it just naturally the fidelity starts to go up. And when I came into the interview to show them, that's why I did a design exercise that evening before I came to the actual meeting, because they gave it to you the night before, but the fidelity naturally ramped up. But it was because of my experience, that where somebody else who had less experience, it was more vanilla, where I'm like, no, well, we know that we're doing this work for such and such a company, so I might as well throw their logo in here. And we know that this is going to happen, so I might as well do this. And especially if it's mobile always has higher fidelity. Even when you use the design kits, everything in there is higher fidelity, so it's not going to look like a wireframe. But
because they've got their design systems to pull from.
Yeah. So, but yeah, a lot of times, people don't. Marisol, people don't understand wireframes.
Marisol, let me go one further. People don't. They don't understand wireframes. They don't understand software development and product development. They just fundamentally don't. Because if they did, they'd understand how you do this stuff. And if you're going to build a high fidelity thing, it's usually for a client, not for the process.
Exactly.
So we did get one more question, and it's going to have to be our last, because now it's 8:30 at night where I am.
Yes.
And this was a nice ending question from Charlene. And we did get another question after, but I'm sorry we're out of time. The question was, for all of you, is UX and CX what you always wanted to do, or was there another dream occupation? So again, lightning round, what did you want to be when you grew up? Nick?
I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a really small kid. Like, I really wanted to be an astronaut. My uncle was a big deal at JPL at NASA, and so I just wanted to be a spaceman. Then I wanted to be a
And
doctor.
look at you
and
now.
My maths, I wanted to be a medical doctor, and my maths is so bad, I'm dyscalculate pretty much, that I'd be a liability. There's no way. So the next best thing was a PhD. So that's basically, I'm like a shit medical doctor. That's me. Either that, my dream job is a pinball designer. That's me. I would love to be a pinball
You've
designer.
got to talk to my previous boyfriend. He had, what, 27 machines in our house?
I need to date your ex-boyfriend. Not sure how he or my wife would feel about that, though.
I don't think he'd like you that way, but he would like to talk to you about pinball. Darren, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was a kid, I either wanted to be a professional athlete, I wanted to play baseball or football, and if not, I wanted to be a coach, ironically. And so I did end up making it to the Professional Bowlers Association. I was a PBA member. I just turned my card in a couple years ago. Things didn't work out when it came to football because I didn't develop what my real skill was until it was too late. I could kick a football, and nobody ever did anything with it. I used to kick off and then run down the field. They ignore me because I was a kicker, and I would lay people out. And I was five. I haven't grown since I was 13, 5'9.5". I was 221 pounds. I bench pressed 365 pounds and ran the 40 and 4.5, and I was only 16 years old. And we just didn't do anything with that. But at any rate,
but I'm not bitter.
Be a coach. I see the parallel with the coaching because there was always this desire, no matter what I did from the time I was like 8 forward, I always wanted to help other people. And that's all I ever did. And my wanting to be a coach, when I realized, okay, if I play football at Wayne State, the NFL is not going to come calling. I was wrong about that, but so much for that. But I still end up in what I do with UX today is I'm always helping and I'm always driving improvement. And that's what as a coach, at a core of being a coach, that's what it was. So in a sense, I did reach my dream.
And when I was a little kid, I wanted to have a career that would help people. Can anybody guess what I wanted to do?
A nurse.
What did Darren say?
Nurse.
You both said nurse.
We both said nurse.
That's weird. That's creepy weird. Because I wanted to be a genetic researcher.
Okay.
I thought that if I could do genetic research and work in a laboratory all the time, I could cure diseases that are passed genetically and help people to stop. It's one thing if you pick up a disease randomly or you pick up a disease from your own bad habits, but I thought maybe I could stop genetic diseases from being passed. And that was my original dream.
So now you help stop design diseases from being passed.
Now I help I help design thinking and design sprints from being passed from generation to generation.
Look, both my children have got my neurodiverse thing. My brother has it, and one of his children do too. So the force runs strong in my family. We're all weirdos, nice. Basically.
I've always been a weirdo, but I'm pretty sure I'm not neurodiverse, but definitely always the weirdo. And as we said earlier, the black sheep. And Charlene's giving us a round of applause. Charlene, what did you want to be? So let's remind everybody that you guys will be here every second Tuesday for the extended 12-inch dance remix version of Office Hours Ask Us Anything. Otherwise, this happens every Tuesday with just me or sometimes a special guest. We do have some special guests coming up. Let me give people just a quick note. If I can find these in my calendar, give me a moment. Who's coming next? No, not that. I know that I think in June I've got Jeremy Kriegel coming. And in June, you know him?
Oh, yeah.
And, okay. And, June, okay, so hold on. Jeremy is June, give me a moment. You guys are June 8, so I think Jeremy is June 15. So June's going to be fun. So June 1, my guest on Office Hours is going to be my boyfriend. So it's going to be Ask Deb or her boyfriend anything, which we did a year ago to celebrate 1,000 subscribers. But since I'm on the edge of 2,000 subscribers, we thought we would do it again and do Nick was watching the end of that one, I remember. Office Hours, Ask Deb and her boyfriend anything to celebrate what I hope will be 2,000 subscribers. June 7, all y'all. June 8, all y'all, and June 15, no, I'm getting all the numbers wrong. June 15, Jeremy. So that's some of the Office Hours special guests that are coming up. Charlene says, I wanted to be a teacher, then an Air Force pilot, then an architect, but I was bad at math and physics. So there you go. So guys, last words from each of you. Last words, Darren.
Let's see. Where do I go today? I celebrated 100 subscribers on the UX Uncensored channel. So thanks you for those of you who are there. We're about to start producing some content. We're having a ball. I talked about the year anniversary for the World of UX podcast. We're having a lot of tremendous success with the UX Chit Chat Hour. That's been great. We're headed into our 6th month, which we are moving up a week because of the upcoming Concentric conference. So we don't want to have that conflict there. So we're going to be next week.
Sorry to cover you up.
Thursday, yes. Oh no,
but
no,
don't forget Concentric, everybody.
Yeah. There we go. I'm trying to get around it there.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. So yeah, that's it for me. I'm just thankful for the opportunity to share. Always have a ball sitting and talking. Are we doing Musketeers or Amigos? Well, I know there was some talk about that.
I just want to make sure that no one is offended by either word before I put anything anywhere. Right now, I'm calling it us because I'm just afraid. Nick, last words from you. How do we find you?
How do you find me? LinkedIn. Although I'm taking a minor hiatus from LinkedIn, sorry, I won't go into that. LinkedIn is probably the one. So get hold of me on LinkedIn. That's pretty much it. Also, please do watch the UX Psychology channel on YouTube and give me a subscribe. I don't know where my subscribership is. It's nowhere near these guys. But that introduction to UX Psychology video, if you haven't watched it, please do. That's my heart on a plate, or that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Got it. Everyone do the thing. And y'all know me, and hope people didn't, Jason says us. I hope everybody wasn't too alienated by some of our personal talk earlier, but I'm imagining that many people, while it may have felt a little awkward, I think many people are going to identify with it. So hopefully it was more helpful than awkward, though I recognize it could be both. So to be continued with our fellow amigos, musketeers, whatever is appropriate to say. I will see tomorrow, I think, is our Slack networking. So if you're doing the Slack thing, look in the live events room for the networking and sign up for Concentric, everybody. deltacx.com, this time com/concentric. It is free, totally free. And that's it. So I'm going to play us out of here. Let me find the thing that shuts the show down. And thanks again to the doctors and future doctors and the audience. And we'll see you very soon. Bye.
See you later, guys. Bye.
Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.